Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and welcome back once again after a long and not really welcome, but unfortunately necessary hiatus on my part. We're back with the Zero G podcast. I am joined, as usual, by my cohort, Creator Z, and we are joined once again by our friend Shadow Thief, or Phantom Shadow Thief, or Phantom Thief Shadow. I don't remember exactly how you did it. We're joined by Shadow. And tonight we're going to be talking comics. Oh dear, I think OBS is crashing.
Just Shadow. We're off to a great start, guys.
Okay, OBS is not crashing. Okay, disaster averted for now.
I hope you keep that.
Oh, I'm keeping everything in here. All the screw ups and everything. I leave all that shit in here. I don't have the fucking time to go through and edit these hour-long videos. This is just the kind of professionalism that you get on this show.
Love it. Quote unquote professionalism.
Yes. So, as I said, tonight we're going to be talking comics. Specifically tonight, we're going to be talking the comics industry. We're going to be taking a look at some numbers. We're going to be talking about just kind of the general state of things right now as we understand it. You know, Z and myself as people who are loosely involved in this sort of thing, given that, you know, he and I are both independent webcomic developers. Shadow is somebody who's got a great interest in manga and at least some interest in independent comics, although less so in the bigger mainstream names, your Marvels, your DCs, which I think is true of all of us, especially these days. And, yeah, so I guess to open this up, I'll tell you guys a little bit about some stuff I've been hearing. So a lot of the people that I watch, a lot of the more kind of finger on the pulse industry insiders and industry observers that I keep tabs on, who I know you keep tabs on some of these guys too, Shadow, who mentioned this before the show. They've been talking lately about there being a lot of chatter going on mainstream comics Twitter. A lot of people from DC and Marvel, many of whom were not active for a couple of years, all suddenly getting active at once, all suddenly chatting with each other, chatting with people, and by chatting with people I generally mean being shitty to them on Twitter, because that's what they do, and really acting kind of strange, because some of these people, like I mentioned, apparently are coming back after 2 or 3 years of absence and acting like nothing's changed in that time. Like, it's just business as usual. Nothing to see here, folks, as Officer Barb Brady would say. And I've heard it speculated by some people that they kind of suspect that something big behind the scenes is happening at DC or Marvel, or possibly even both, and that it's not good for DC and Marvel. And, I mean, based on some of those figures that we were talking about before the start of this, I think that's pretty safe to say. Yeah, they might be hitting that point of no return where they're not going to be able to claw their way back. So, kind of curious. No real evidence, like hard evidence of that happening yet so far, especially because they're keeping the numbers a lot closer to the chest these days, but I mean, that in and of itself in some ways could potentially be seen as evidence of, like, hey, you know, why are you so reluctant to show your sales figures nowadays? Is it because they're not doing so good? And yeah, we pretty much know that they're not. But yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Have you guys heard anything about that side of things?
I mean, you know, I think we all pretty much knew that, you know, the comics industry was struggling. I think before they were trying to throw it on a lot of different reasons that maybe people were, you know, hip to consuming comics in a different way now, or, you know, COVID, you know, as far as last year goes, things of that nature. We all know, you know, that that's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah, there was a lot I saw early on in 2020. There was a lot of blaming of COVID for things going wrong, as if that suddenly was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, come on, man! Like, you guys have been dealing with these issues since 2015. You know, you've been seeing this precipitous drop since 6 years ago, and it got way worse 3 years ago in 2017. Don't pretend like this is just COVID.
Yeah, I don't hear any of the independent creators complaining about COVID when they can do their shit at home.
No, they aren't. That kind of touches on something else that I was listening to earlier today. How it was something that Diversity in Comics, well, formerly Diversity in Comics, now it's Comics Matter with your boy Zach. I keep forgetting that that's his name now. But your boy Zach was talking about a couple of threads that he saw from older guys, like older pros. They used to do work for Marvel and DC back in the 90s and 2000s. Like, one of these dudes is 50, and he went independent, crowdfunded his first book, I think last year, and the dude's at 50 is buying his first house from going independent. Granted, it's an anecdotal story, but I mean, you don't hear any anecdotes like that coming out of Marvel or DC.
Yeah,
some people call that karma.
We were I'm in this group on Facebook, and there was a conversation that people were having about the benefits of going independent versus working for a large company like Marvel or DC, and that a lot of times you'll find a lot of success. I mean, Image, I guess people kind of use as like the gold standard. You look at guys like Robert Kirkman, right. Or even if you look at guys like Mark Miller, who has Miller World, like and Mark Miller now. I mean, it looks like Robert Kirkman he's worked with AMC with The Walking Dead. He's has a more hands-on thing now with Invincible, where he's actually doing the writing for the animated adaptation to his comic.
Yeah, he apparently had a pretty big hand in that and kind of corrected some things. From what I had heard, he corrected some things with his run of the comic that he wasn't happy with. Yeah.
So, he's has a more hands-on approach with this, and as you can see, it's definitely turned out something that a lot of people are happy with, and he's having access to all of your own stories, being able to sell it to whoever you want, do this, do that. I mean, obviously there's a financial benefit to it. You don't really see a lot of guys who are working for these big companies doing that unless there's somebody who is very revered in that space, and they're able to kind of work out their own deals, because they're pretty much like freelancers. They go work for Marvel, work for DC, they work for Vertigo, they work for anybody.
And even then, some of those guys are still struggling within the industry itself. Like, if they're staying in the mainstream, a lot of those guys, even the big dogs, they're not getting really paid what their skills are worth a lot of that time. I mean, it's like we mentioned. I wish I could remember the name of the guy that Zach was talking about, but this dude was, a big name in the industry. I mean, he'd been working in it for like 30, 35 years or so, since he was in his late teens, early 20s. Drew a lot of, did art for a lot of big books. Apparently, worked with DC, I think, mainly. And was living in an apartment with his family until he decided, I'm going to go independent and just, like, make my own book and sell it myself and crowdfund it myself. It's like, again, anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence is not universal. It can always be a one-off kind of thing. But I don't know that you can call that sort of thing a one-off. The strength of the independent stage now, I don't know if you can call that a one-off situation when this is just one more example, one more grain of sand on the growing heap.
No, I don't think it's necessarily an anecdotal thing, because whoever that guy is, you can count him, you can count Mark Miller, you can count the entire 5 guys who created Image. Well, the 4 guys that created Image, and then they added Robert Kirkman. So you could have all of those guys. I mean, when you look at, I mean, like I said, Image is kind of the gold standard for at least American side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at a lot of the comics that they've written that become movies. You know, now you have TV shows. Now you have, you know, like you said, well, before the thing cut off, we were talking about The Boys. The Boys is another one that's found a lot of success, written by a smaller publishing company. Where if it was something for DC, I mean, half the time people don't even know who created these characters. They don't even know you know, you just know the company behind it. And it's funny, I gotta look up who created The Watchmen, because I was reading something about that, where the guy who made The Watchmen had an issue.
Alan Moore, I believe.
Yes. He had an issue because he didn't have the rights to the characters that he made. So Dr. Manhattan and Rorschach and Ozymandias and I can't think of his name right now. But you know what I'm talking about. The cast of characters that he had. Silk Spectre and all those guys.
Yeah, Silk Spectre, the comedian.
The comedian, who I was thinking of, the comedian. You know, you have all these characters, and he doesn't have access to them. And you know, I think he wanted to do like his own thing with it. I was reading he wanted to do like his own, and DC gave him such a hard time giving him custody of the character. He never actually got it. He never actually got custody. Yeah. I think they did like a deal where like they were like, yeah, if we stop printing it for like, you know, 5 years, you can get it. But they're not going to do that, you know. So
yeah, well, those are the kind of, they work those kinds of deals very frequently. I mean, it's the same with the movie studios too. That's part of the reason why, you know, I mean, well, now you know, the Fox properties, Fantastic Four, and whoever the fuck else from Marvel it is, the X-Men. Now those are back in house since Fox is now under Disney. But you know, you look at Sony's got Spider-Man in his entire suite, and they worked out the same kind of deals with Marvel, who signed them off back in the day to avoid bankruptcy. And it's like, yeah, you know, we're working out the same sort of deals nowadays, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, well, you can get the rights to, or you guys can keep the rights to Spider-Man and Venom and all of them, but you have to make a movie once every so and so many years. And if you don't, then the rights automatically divert back to Marvel. And
yeah,
so,
and, you know, and that's why they were putting, and then that's when they started creating the Venom, and they're like, oh, well, we could kind of delay it if we do Venom, or if we do one of the other characters that may be able to kind of stand alone in his own film. But then they worked out a deal where they're going to be working together anyway, so that's kind of a you know, moot point now, at least for now, because you know they had an issue with that. But yeah, I think that there's a space now, and that wasn't really available, you know, years ago. At least independent. I'm not saying that the independent comics didn't exist, but now we have webtoons, now we have topless.
Exactly. You know. Yeah, we've got the internet's changed the whole industry. I mean, you and I, we each write our own webtoon. Shadow, I mean, you frequent the site all the time. Like, you read both my webtoon, you read Z's webtoon. I actually, funny enough too, I just found out a couple friends of mine that I lost contact with a few years ago that I used to play tabletop games with 6 or 7 years ago. They're writing a webtoon, and it's a fucking original. Just a couple gals that I knew that I used to game with. I just, by pure fucking chance, like earlier this week, happened to see a banner ad come up on Webtoon for this one called Shiloh. I clicked on it because I'm like, you know, that art looks real familiar to me. And I read the names of the people. Yeah. I read the name of the writer, and I read the name of the artist, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. I know these two. So, I've got these two that I know who made a successful Webtoon original. You and I, Z. We've got Atmaru and Nicole that we know with Gull. Successful Webtoon original. There's been Brent Bristol for Ordeal, who you know, I know Z, you, myself, and Jareth. I don't know if you follow Ordeal at all, Shadow, but that's another guy that we know just got his Webtoon raised to original.
Not to get off topic, I personally think that Brent has I'm not even going to try to preference my comments. I will say he has one of the top 5 best art styles I've ever seen.
Oh, the dude's fantastic.
I mean, does the character for? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's just my opinion. I was gonna say for an independent comic, but even taking that aside, just the style that he has it's amazing. Like it's really amazing. That's a once in a generation kind of style. When you're looking at it, it's dope. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, he has the potential to become famous on his art style. What was it you were going to ask there, Shadow?
I was going to ask, does the character look like he has like a Western style to him with like revolvers and stuff like that?
His style is a mix of Western and manga. He's kind of like perfected that, which is really
okay. Because I was looking at it right now, like that actually does look good. I'll have to read it later.
Yeah, it's really well done. He's a pretty decent writer too. So Brent's got a good sense of pacing. He's got a good sense of angles, actions, paneling, all that stuff you need to become a really successful comic book writer and artist. He's got it. So the fact that he is now.
The patience to draw anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, his is definitely worth reading. But I mean, that's just the thing. It's like the independent world is massive now because you've got so many options. We've got options like Webtoon. We've got options like Tapas. We've got the online publishing options or the digital only publishing options. You've also got more and more independent publishers too, like Antarctic Press or one that's blowing up big right now, Iconic Comics. Their series have been doing really, really well. Like I mentioned to, I don't remember if I mentioned it to you, Shadow, but I know you and I talked about it, Z, how I recently spoke with Douglas Ernst, who's the author of the Soulfinder comics, and he recently joined up with them for his second book, Soulfinder Black Tide. And yeah, I mean, I believe he used to write comics for DC and Marvel back in the day. He also, I think, used to be a journalist as well. I don't remember 100%. I'll have to actually see if I can speak with him again at some point and see if we can, who knows, maybe we can convince him to come on our little show because he's a very charitable kind of guy. He might actually be willing to do that. But I know he had a long and pretty storied writing career, and basically with just the way things went in mainstream comics, the way things have gone, how things have become so heavily politicized and everything, he basically just got yeeted out of there because they didn't like the things he believes. He's very much openly Christian. I don't recall what specific denomination he is, but he's very open about that fact. Very similar to, we mentioned this before the show, very similar to Vic Mignogna, how he's ran into the same kind of problems with Funimation, like them treating him like shit and eating him and all this stuff because of similar reasons. They claim that it's not, but it's pretty damn obvious by the kind of treatment he receives that yeah, that's where it was. But I mean, now he's gone independent. Ernst has gone independent, and he's seeing huge success with his books.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of options out there, and I think now seems like a good enough time to go on to go across the pond and take a look at our friends in Japan and that side of things and how badly they are crushing Marvel and DC and yeah. So
I would like to say, before you even get into that, this is crazy that now to sit here and think about it with manga. When I was in high school, it wasn't cool to be like a guy who read manga and watched anime. And Dragon Ball
I got
was
shit
always
talked for it all the time when I was in middle school and high school. All the fucking time.
Dragon Ball was like Dragon Ball Z was like the only acceptable thing that you could watch, right? Everything, like if you watch Naruto or Zatch Bell or Rurouni Kenshin or any of that other stuff, people were like, "Oh, you know, what are you watching? It's for little kids," and it's just like it really isn't. But okay, you know, and now to kind of see this transformation where everyone's watching it, everyone's tuning in. It's not just Dragon Ball. It's, you know, it's a lot of shows. It's a lot of manga that is being consumed, and it's now a cool thing where you have people, you know, merging anime and manga with clothing, and it's cool to walk around and wear it. You know, it's actually
becoming
fun.
mainstream. Well, I mean, you can't even say becoming. It's become mainstream. And I mean, the numbers we're going to get into here, that's going to show it. But yeah, it's a little off topic. But before we get into that, you talking about that side of things, Z, it's got me thinking. Like, I know I'm the oldest among us all here. Between Shadow and I, the gap's not that huge. I mean, the gap's not that huge between any of us, if I remember correctly. I think it's 6 years between you and I, Z, and then 4 years between you and I, Shadow.
Are we the same age?
Yeah, I'm 34. I can't.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
never mind.
No, because Chef and I are the same age. But okay, yeah. So you guys are like right around the same age then, because I think Z, you're 28, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm just kind of curious. Partly also because too, like, you know, my introduction with anime was through the video store. This is when I was at that age when Toonami started. Well, actually, really, my introduction to anime and all that stuff was when I was really young. I happened to catch Vampire Hunter D uncut on TV, except for the nude scene. Everything else was uncut on Cartoon Network at like 1 o'clock at night, and I was like 7.
I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
Oh, Vampire Hunter D is a classic. You got to check that one out. It's not the best. I will preface that now, but it's some good 80s like sci-fi horror fun. It's pretty good.
Like the only bit of anime that I got into when Toonami first came out was well, I got introduced to Gundam, but for some reason it never interested me until I got introduced to G Gundam and Zoids.
Okay, yeah, a little more straight action heavy on those ones. Because Gundam tries to do the whole anti-war thing. I say tries to because it kind of shoots itself in the foot by also just showing cool giant robots shooting each other. But I digress. I'm just kind of curious, like, how you guys got into it, because, like, even though my first few was on TV on Cartoon Network when I was a kid, you know, when Toonami was really hitting its stride, the town I lived in had the strangest fucking thing they did, where Cartoon Network shared a channel with, what is it? C-SPAN. Cartoon Network and C-SPAN shared a channel in the town I used to live in. Channel 41. So at 4 o'clock, when Toonami would start, at 4 o'clock, switches to C-SPAN. It was infuriating.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, I've never met anyone else who had that happen, but I swear to you, that actually happened. Every day, 4 o'clock, Cartoon Network switches over to C-SPAN. Same channel. Channel 41. And then it moved to Channel 50. The same thing happened. It's just, so, for me, the anime side of things, and then later, you know, manga as well, that was all from the video store and the library. Anytime I was reading manga or anytime I was watching anime, it was something that I found at the video store. So a lot of the anime I was exposed to as a kid were the 80s and 90s OVAs, the ones that became infamous for how gory and violent they were.
Well, actually, let me correct you on that one. The one of the 80s OVAs that I saw actually wasn't gory. It was the OVA for Oh My Goddess.
Okay,
That one was actually pretty good.
Bad. I don't think I ever saw that OVA, but I do know. I mean, that wasn't one of the really gory ones. But the ones that I ended up getting started on were, as I mentioned, Vampire Hunter D, which was on the lower end of that spectrum where that stuff was concerned. But my friends, we watched Slayers, we watched this really awful
that was one anime that
called
showed on the Animation Channel. I never got to watch.
Yeah, I never finished it, but that was kind of how I got my start in that. So I'm just kind of curious if you guys had similar experiences with that, with getting started on the old OVAs and all that kind of thing.
I never saw any of the OVAs back then. It was all like the series stuff. Dragon Ball Z was actually one of the... Well, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z were the ones that I also got into as well. I can't count how many times me and my brother fight over Goku.
My friends and I were always bigger on Vegeta and Piccolo.
Yeah, the regard that I hold Dragon Ball in is different from most. I don't even entertain conversations with people on what's the greatest anime or manga of all time. To me, it's Dragon Ball. And I'm not even talking about Dragon Ball Z. I'm talking about the original Dragon Ball. It's
Dragon Ball
that it had. It's undeniable. And I'm not saying from a story perspective. I'm not even, I'm not going down that path or anything like that.
It ticks all the buttons for you. It ticks all the check boxes for you.
The influence that it's had, it's undeniable. No one can say that Dragon Ball hasn't influenced them in some way, shape, or form, because it was the basis for Dragon Ball Z. So without Dragon Ball, you don't get Dragon Ball Z. Without Dragon Ball Z, there's no GT, there's no Super. So
there's no Kai.
Yeah, there's no... Whatever your favorite version of Dragon Ball is. And that was the first anime that I watched. The first manga that I've read was actually Naruto. I had a friend named Tim. His name was Tim. And Tim, he came from a more wealthy family, and he will always let me borrow his Naruto books. I used to read a lot as a child, and I never really read a lot of manga. I never read manga until he let me borrow his first few volumes of Naruto, and then obviously I kind of got into it on my own, and I continued to read it, and that was the first manga that I've read. So Naruto also holds and then that's when I got into reading Dragon Ball. I read the entire Dragon Ball series. And that's kind of what made me want to start doing my own. Was after I read Naruto, which was ongoing at the time, so I can't say I finished it. But and I read One Piece. I started reading Zatch Bell. That's when I started saying, you know what, I think I want to do this, and I started writing my own story. It just took me forever to actually put one out.
Yeah, to find that one to really get behind.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking on those influences and stuff. I mean, you think about the kind of stuff that we have now. You can trace those lines of influence back. Like, obviously, Toriyama, Dragon Ball, was very, very. I mean, he was straight up influenced by Journey to the West. His story is his own retelling of Journey to the West that has now, influenced so many other creators after him, to the point that now you have Jujutsu Kaisen, which could largely be considered to be, in terms of the shonen formula, quite possibly the single most perfect execution of the shonen formula that's ever been written. They hit every beat perfectly with that so far, at least so far. And I mean, speaking of that, since that's one of the ones on the list, I mean, let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start first with, I have a couple lists here pulled up. We're going to look at top 10 books for US comics, both Marvel and DC, in terms of estimated units sold. And I want to preface this to make something very clear here, too. The only list that I could find for Marvel and DC for estimated units sold was estimated units sold to the distributors, so to comic book shops and newsstands, the kind of places, you know, where you would sell comic books, hobby shops, comic shops, the rare newsstand that might still exist in the world, the whole two of them. So, top 10, you know, got Wolverine issue 1 at 196,000 units, Wonder Woman issue 750, 168,000 units, Thor number 1, 163, Spider-Woman number 1, 142, Star Wars number 1, 97,000, X-Men number 4, 93,000, X-Men number 6, 92,000, Batman number 91, 88,000, Batman number 90, 87,000, and The Flash number 750 at 82,000. I want to compare that to the sales for manga. Because, my God. So, I'm going to go in reverse order for the manga. And this is from 2020. Both of these were from last year. So, number 10, Attack on Titan, 4.3 million. Number 9, Spy and Family, or Spy X Family, 4.5 million. 8, My Hero Academia, 6 million. 7, The Q Quintuplets, 6.1 million. 6, The Promised Neverland, 6.3 million. 5, Jujutsu Kaisen, 6.7 million. 4, Haikyuu, 7.2 million. 3, One Piece, 7.7 million. 2, Kingdom, 8.2 million. And number 1, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, 82.3 million copies sold. Not to distributors, to the hands of the public. Confirmed. Tell me again, Marvel and DC, how you guys are not failing right now.
Well, alright, so just to be a little bit of a contrarian, just a little bit, you know, I will say that the culture in Asia over what manga is and what it means to them is a lot different than what comics is here and what it means to us.
That is very true. But
that's not an excuse. I'm just saying that, you know, as far as how, you know, here, you know, it's just, it's not as big in our culture, you know, as it is over there. I mean, you know, there's literally groups of people who eat, breathe, sleep this stuff in Asia, not just Japan. I'm saying, you know, in a lot of other countries as well, they're still consuming what Japan is creating, even though they have their own version of, you know, comics. It may not be manga. It may be, you know, Korea has, that's where webtoons come from, is in Korea. And, you know, there's different versions of it in each country, even though manga literally just means comic or, you know, pictures. But it's just it means something different to them. So that's the only thing I want to point out. I don't want to be too unfair to them, but the gap in numbers is too wide for that to be an excuse. It's just you know,
I mean, not to make a pun here, but it's an ocean of difference, you know. But and the other thing that the one thing I would say to counter that though is, of the titles on this list, there are 6 of them that we know for sure are doing gangbusters out here. You know, the only 4 that I haven't heard anyone out here really talk about, and I will grant that that's because I'm not exactly somebody who's whole hog 100% in on manga and anime. You know, I'm a casual fan. I watch a few things here and there, just whatever happens to catch my eye. I don't necessarily follow whatever is the big popular one at the time. I've never really been that type. But Kingdom, Haikyuu, Q Quintuplets, Spy X Family, those 4 from that list of 10 are the only ones that I have not heard people here talk about. Attack on Titan, My Hero Academia, The Promised Neverland, Jujutsu Kaisen, One Piece, and obviously Demon Slayer. I hear people talk about these all the time. all the time here in America, hearing people talk about these all the time, hearing people from Europe talk about these. Nobody talks about new comics, though. They'll talk about old comics. They'll talk about old storylines that were used in the movies, things like Civil War and, you know, the Dark Knight, or the Dark Knight Returns, like some of those story beats used in the Dark Knight Rises, you know, things like that. I'll hear talked about, but nothing new, because what's new is not selling. And I mean,
you know, as the saying goes, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
Yeah. Yep. And that's for me what I just find so just baffling is how so many of these so-called pros who work for Marvel and DC can act so high and mighty, like they've got such influence and such power. Oh, they're so great and amazing. They're just the best thing since sliced bread. And yet no one is buying your books. Nobody is spending money on your books. So what are you really doing? Like, it doesn't warrant that kind of... it doesn't justify that kind of, you know, the kind of attitude that we've seen coming from Marvel and DC over the years. And personally, I think that's where their biggest failing is the attitude, both in terms of how they approach their stories and how they approach their customers, is just shitty.
Oh, I will say that I think that the way, obviously, I want to kind of throw out solutions to the problem. You know, I don't want to just shit on them, right?
Exactly.
I think that one of the issues with Marvel and DC is they really don't have a way for you to pitch them ideas. There's no way you can go to like their site and really pitch ideas to them. I mean, Dark Horse has a way you could do it. Image kind of has a way you could do it. A lot of these other like companies that are like a level below them have ways you could kind of pitch ideas. These big companies, they do think that they're so big that they don't need, you know, new ideas. And the only way you could really get an idea to them is if you're somebody in the industry and you're, you know, I guess, you know, somebody who's known. You know, like they're not letting the average Joe walk in and present them with an idea. They think that the guys they have are good enough or, you know, better than whatever you're going to tell them. Whatever idea you're about to present, they have better ideas. And I think that that's a problem because, I mean, I have friends who, you know, will blow your mind with storyline ideas that they have, you know, for, you know, comics. And the fact that they can't get these ideas to them, I think they're suffering. I think me and you've had this conversation before about, or, you know, half the time when I'm not doing anything and I'm spending time on YouTube looking at like stuff that these YouTube creators are doing, and it's mind-blowingly amazing. And I'm like, dude, they're doing this without a budget. And, you know, there's ideas for Star Wars. There's ideas for, you know, and there's ways they could put this into a comic form to sell or whatever. But they don't have talent scouts. Or there's no way for you to submit these ideas to Lucasfilm or any of these companies. You have to be somebody who's already kind of in the industry. And honestly, I think that a lot of the writers are not fans of what they're writing.
They're not. They're not. Many of the times it gets confirmed. Like that's one of the big problems that we keep seeing is it's not just the fact that Marvel and DC, the big names, don't really care to let the public submit ideas. They don't take ideas from the public. There's also the fact too that they're all about hiring by quota. They're all about. I mean, it's they're basically both becoming affirmative action the company, and it's just getting to the point where now they've been playing this game over and over so many times that we're seeing the same ideas, the same failed ideas, repeat again and again. And it's just the public is starting. Well, the public has taken serious notice, which is, I mean, that's why we see, part of why we see such a huge difference in the sales figures between manga and mainstream comics in the West. But it's not just a bankruptcy of ideas; it's a recycling of failed ideas and a stubborn refusal to let creatives actually be creative, because that's the thing. For the most part, from what I keep hearing and what I keep seeing is being said by people who are or were inside the mainstream industry, Marvel and DC don't work that way anymore, where somebody comes up with an idea and pitches it, unless it's somebody, like, unless, with the exception of one or two really specific people, they don't really do that anymore. They have basically a writer's room who assigns stories to people. Like, you get a certain story assigned to you with a certain character, and you're basically told, write this story. And there's an unspoken expectation of what that story is going to be, which is why we start seeing so many rehashes of these same ideas over and over.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the and I mean, honestly, you know, I think that's unfortunate, because that's the stupidest thing I've heard. You know, I just think that's incredibly stupid. There's no way that, you know, these companies can't. I mean, dude, it could be as simple as a competition. You know, whoever writes the best story for, you know, you just name a character. Superman. You know, whoever writes the best Superman story is going to get, you know, an opportunity to have us publish it, and, you know, we'll give you, you know, 12% royalties on the sales, or whatever the case is, right? And I mean, that's reasonable. I mean, but I think that they would find the person that could do it. I just think that they just have to kind of come up with ways to kind of get people involved, because there's people who are really passionate about their stories, their characters, and you can't just rely on writers because that's what they do. I mean, writers get writers block. Good.
I was just saying, I mean, that thing with passion, you know, that was something that I wanted to mention about not just the independent side of things, but manga as well. I mean, manga and anime are both among those who are aware of how the industry works, which sadly is not that many people in the West, but both the manga and the anime industries are notorious for how little they pay. Like, you're making often less than minimum wage, and in anime in particular, you're making less than minimum wage most of the time if you're an animator or an artist there. I don't know if it's that bad with manga, but I know it's pretty rough there too. And yet, you get these situations where you've got these stories being printed out that have such mass appeal that, like we said with those numbers earlier, they're selling in the millions, to the point that the #1 story, which, by the way, and I only bring this up because this is something that I keep seeing the so-called comic book pros bring up, this idea of, oh, you know, women can't make it in comics without our help. Demon Slayer selling 82.3 million copies, literally more than every other one of the top 10 manga on that list, all 9 of those combined. It sold more than all of them combined, written by a woman.
For real?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Full Metal Alchemist is written by a woman.
Exactly. Some of the best anime and manga out there. Full Metal Alchemist, Demon Slayer, written by women who love what they're doing, who love their craft. Passion is a very important part of it, and that's what we don't see in the big guys anymore.
I will, you know, I will say that in both of those series, as you can see, as well as a lot of other, there's one other one I can't think of, that is written by a woman too. But the interesting thing is, and I don't know, people may take this the wrong way, right? But I'm gonna say it because it's on my mind. Their main characters are men, and what happens is they don't write to basically try to get like some kind of message out. You know, they're writing a story that they love and that they think is interesting, no matter if the main character is a female. Because I mean, Sailor Moon was written by a female lead. It sold a lot. It was a very big series. It had an anime. So, but you know, my point is that it's not something like they're not given into the constraints of I'm a woman, I have to write about a woman, and that's it. You know, that's not what they're doing. They just tell a story. They're not given it. They're not forced to get, or they're not being forced or forcing themselves into doing what people expect of them. As you can see, most people aren't aware that Demon Slayer is written and drawn by a woman. Most people aren't aware that Full Metal Alchemist is written and drawn by a woman. You know, and again, there's no message there. There's no feminist hidden meaning behind it. There's no, you know, obviously Full Metal Alchemist had a lot of, you know, meaning in it. It had a lot of different.
Funny enough, both of those stories have the same kind of core message, which is about, you know, family. Like the core message behind FMA and Demon Slayer is family. And yeah, I mean, that's something that resonates with people. And that's the other thing you're mentioning too. This is a situation where, and this is where Marvel's biggest failing is, and this is what I was trying to get at when bringing up this idea of you're seeing the same problems repeated, the same ideas repeated, the same stories, big air quotes around that, repeated, because there is no focus on writing new interesting stories there. It's about messaging first, story second. And it's the same messages put forward every time, by the same people every time, about the same type of characters every time. Ta-Nehisi Coates. Oh, you're a black writer? Well, we're going to give you this black character, write about the problems of black people in America. That is literally every single one of his books. All of them. It's the same thing every time.
I thought of the other one. It was Inuyasha. Was written by a female.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and she also wrote Rampant.
A fan favorite.
And
right, yeah, favorite.
Code Geass is written by a group of women.
That's one I didn't know. And Code Geass, I thought was yeah, Code Geass was amazing.
Yeah, it's a group of women. It's like 4 of them. So there's a lot of, you know, as you can see, and everyone that you know that we just named are very popular, very interesting, and they didn't limit themselves to just writing about the female plight, because that's where you were kind of heading just now, and with the, you know, they're not limiting themselves to just writing about the female plight or, you know, whatever people expect them to write about. And that's kind of, you know, one of the things we were talking before the show started, where it's just like I noticed that a lot of other black creators, like, you know, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be surprised at my race, you know, when they look at Immortal Blood, you know, they're like, wait, what? You know, like, but my whole thing is that I was just that influenced by manga that, you know, I was just like, nah, I want to do this, you know. I didn't want to limit myself to just do something that is based here in America about black issues or, you know, the black plight. Everyone's doing that, you know. So I just kind of wanted to do something a little different. You know, do I have ideas and things? Yeah, but it's not something that I'm going to. It's gonna be. Obviously, like I said, all stories have a message in it. I just think you have to kind of hide it in the story.
Yeah.
So, you know, people are more interested in the story than the message, and they kind of get the message along with it. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. You know,
messaging works when it's left as subtext. It stops working when you make it overt and start slapping people in the face with it.
Yeah, blatantly obvious.
So, yeah, we're climbing up towards an hour now, and I've noticed that when these things get over an hour, then uploads on the backup site tend not to work very well. So I think we could probably get to wrapping it up here, but I figure how about let's end on a little bit of a positive note. What do you guys think about each of us giving one either manga or comic that we think people should definitely get out there and read that has influenced us?
Besides our own?
Well, yeah, obviously besides our own. Read Phoenix Rising and Immortal Blood.
Yeah.
Don't
Links down
read any
below.
of my stuff because I don't have content. Not yet, anyway.
Soon, though, soon. Yeah, I mean, once you get the actual time to put your voice acting channel up, we will definitely put a link here for that.
Almost definitely. I'm in the process of having a cover art done for a Siren's Love song.
Nice.
I still need to ask your boy Nick if he can work on the cover art for both Wrath and Lust and then Agent Pride.
That'd be pretty sweet. But yeah, so how about you got any ideas from you guys? Any manga or comics that you would highly recommend that anybody out there, whether they're big fans of it or not, just get out there and give a read to?
As far as manga goes, it would depend on what kind of genre you're looking for. The first manga I ever got into was called Blackbird. No, actually, let me rephrase that. It was like a watered down, edgy style of manga that a friend of mine got me hooked on. It was called AI Love You. It was about a dude who ends up falling an AI program that comes out of his computer, becomes a real woman.
I haven't read it, and I'm pretty sure there's an anime of it because I believe I saw that show up on Crunchyroll, actually.
Oh my god, that's an actual anime. I want to see it now.
Yeah.
I have a shit ton of manga, dude. I couldn't even hand out any names, but Blackbird was a good manga. Black Lagoon, good manga and anime. I heard they're making a season.
Black Lagoon's fantastic, pulpy fun.
I heard season 3 is supposed to come out sometime either this year or next year.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. She can definitely show me what she does with those two hands. Sorry, I couldn't help it. I needed to. Missions of Love was a good romance one. Kind of gets twisted a little bit. Yes, I like romance stuff.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no judgment here, bro.
Spice and Wolf, all-time favorite actually. I can't think of anything else. What about you guys?
How about you, Z?
So, as far as comics go, I can't give an accurate thing about that as far as current comics. I mean, if you're talking about all time, obviously, I think The Watchmen would be one that people should pick up. I think the series of which one is it? The one where Batman fought Superman, The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, that
Frank Miller, absolutely.
Yeah, Frank Miller. I think that's a really good one. As far as currently, I mean, I guess what's gonna have a resurgence of buys is Invincible, obviously because of the success of the animation. Even though I don't recommend people actually reading it because there's major differences between the comic book and the animation, and you really don't want to ruin that story for yourself. If you like the animation, I think you should, just wait for the next season.
Yeah, especially since the writer is actively working on the animation also to add additional context and kind of correct some things that he wasn't as happy with.
So I think that, as far as comics, those would kind of be like my, things. I mean, the manga, right now, there's a couple that I really pay attention to. They're really mainstream though, which is Attack on Titan. I think that, there's only a few people who are writers that I think are geniuses. One is J.K. Rowling. I think she's a genius.
Yeah. Tolkien.
I think yeah, Tolkien, I think, but he's not here anymore. So I was saying, as far as people are alive, J.K. Rowling, why can't I think of his name? The guy that wrote Star Wars, George Lucas. George Lucas. Even though I have a lot of issues with what he does, I think overall the ideas
when it comes to world building and understanding,
yes.
how to create.
Yes,
compelling.
I think there's definitely individual issues with certain things that he's done. But outside of that, I think he's on that level. Stephen King, I think, is on that level with a lot of his old work. But as far as current people, Isayama, the guy who's writing Attack on Titan, I think is a genius. That series is amazing to me. The layers of, now you kind of know everything that's going on, but the way it was kind of revealed to you in the beginning, where you had, every time they would answer a question, you had more you would have more questions,
right?
And I think it was kind of masterfully done in terms of that angle. A lot of the action was great. I like that show. And another person I think is on that level is actually One from
yes, definitely.
Mob
Psycho 100 and One Punch Man.
Yes. Mob Psycho 100 is my favorite. It's my favorite anime manga. And I'm so mad he stopped really, actively writing it. I mean, he's done with the story, but I just felt like there was so much more to offer. But he's done with it. I guess, maybe he didn't feel as though there was much more to offer. I think that One is on that level of blending comedy and action perfectly. Yeah. He's a smart guy. So Mob Psycho 100 is on my list. One Punch Man is on my list. And for history's sake, as I said earlier, Dragon Ball, and I want to say Bleach, but Bleach is not really something that I think I would tell somebody, like, hey, this is the greatest thing ever. I just think that it had a lot of influence at its time. For it influence, like, to me, Jujutsu Kaisen is something that was influenced by Bleach.
It was. It definitely was.
Yeah, it was influenced by Bleach. And, I think that because of the influences that are out now, I think Bleach is something that people should read. He had a lot of good ideas, a lot of great character designs. The animation, I think it wasn't the best quality, though. I don't think the animation was done very well. But as far as the story is, I thought it was pretty good. I'm not putting that on the genius level. I just think that as far as, I think that it was really good. I think that story was really good. So those are my picks.
I'll keep because you guys covered a pretty wide swath, so I'll just keep mine brief. I'll go ahead and keep it to just some more recent independent stuff that I've read. Like I mentioned earlier, the Soulfinder books by Douglas Ernst, Demon's Match and Black Tide, the first two that he's got out right now. He's working on the third currently with, I believe I think he said it's Matthew Weldon who's the artist that's working with him right now. It's not the same artist that worked with him on the first book, but both of those I would highly recommend. Very tightly paced. I do think that the first book is a little bit better paced than the second book, but both of them very good, beautiful art, very interesting reads. Kind of has a nice throwback to that kind of classic heroic tale of, you got your good guys fighting your bad guys, and it's not always necessarily clear the good guys are going to win.
From Webtoons?
What's that?
Is this some of the stuff on Webtoons?
No. This one is published. It's a published book from Iconic Comics. And speaking of, also from Iconic Comics, I would recommend the Common America books. Those are freaking hilarious. They do a fantastic job of being both a love letter and satire simultaneously to both American superhero comics and manga. And I absolutely adore them. As for Webtoons, as mentioned, right now, I believe the Canvas page is still up. I don't know how much longer it's going to be because Brent Bristol's ordeal, well worth your read. The art is fucking phenomenal. His writing is pretty damn tight, and he is actively improving it now, so I don't know how much longer the Canvas page is going to stay up, but I know he is currently working on the revision and the republish that he's going to have to do for when it goes to an original series for Webtoons. So keep an eye out for that. Also, one that recently became a Webtoons original, The Eagle and the Snake. Sadly, I cannot remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but that is a great one if you want something that's kind of got a Tarantino-esque crime movie feel. The Eagle and the Snake is fantastic. Dude's got a great black and white classic Western comic style look that still feels very modern film noir. Shadow, I think you especially would really like that one. And other than that, for Webtoons, Goal from Atmaru and Nicole DC, and then of course I gotta give a shout out again to Shiloh by Kit Trace and Kate Flynn. You know, give some shout outs to my friends because I mean they became Webtoon originals for a reason. They're well worth reading, and the art is fantastic for all of them. I would recommend any of these to anybody. The great thing about the Webtoons ones is you can read them free. You just need to get an account, and you just need to be willing to, you know, wait a week or two for new uploads. For Common America and Soul Finder books, they're all available now on Iconic Comics.
I guess if we're doing a web comic series, I'd like to recommend, definitely, number one that I would recommend, Lore of Olympus. Really good.
Oh yeah, Lore of Olympus. I didn't bother putting that on there because that one doesn't really need any help. It's number one on the site.
I know,
Yeah.
but still, I like it.
The other one with the Unordinary, I think, is the other one that
that was one I was going to recommend too. Another one was Down to Earth, Spells from Hell, The Newlywed Diary of a Witch and Dragon. I may have reversed the name on that one. Unholy Blood, and another one that I'm reading called... Oh, here it is. Like Wind on a Dry Branch.
All right. So we got plenty of recommendations here for you guys. Both stuff available online and off.
And then Immortal Blood and Phoenix Rising. I recommend those two.
Yes. Read Immortal Blood and Phoenix Rising. I suppose on that note,
actually, you should read those before you read anything else. I mean, that's...
I would say so too. But
on my arm.
on that note, I think we're gonna go ahead and leave it here. We just passed over an hour, so I think we'll go ahead and call that here for tonight, guys. Thanks once again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Zero G Podcast. Again, I apologize for the extended break. That's entirely my fault and my doing, just because my day-to-day schedule gets so hectic sometimes. But you know, we're going to try to get back into it and get something a little more consistent going on here. Once again, joined as always by Creator Z, author of Immortal Blood, and Phantom Thief Shadow of the YouTube channel of the same name, who will soon be having his own channel dedicated to voice acting and his own little mini-series stories that
actually at this point
putting out.
Actually at this point I think we can just consider myself Shadow of Spades. That's going to be the next channel's name.
Well, all right then, Shadow of Spades it is. And once that channel is up and running, we'll get a link for that going on in our description and pinned comment below too. And with that now said and done, friends of all stripes, thank you for joining us once more, and we hope you have a wonderful day.